It's kind of surreal to be back up on this stage. Had you told me that the last time I was up on the stage, that in just 2 years, I'd be living next to a 102-year-old woman who still makes her own vodka, I would have never believed you, ever. I mean, honestly, I would have been really jealous of that premonition, as I've always had a really special place in my heart for the elderly population. But again, I wouldn't have believed you in the slightest. But that is exactly what one facet of my life looks like right now as the artist in residence at Milwaukee Catholic Home, which is a retirement community and healthcare facility for the elderly population on the east side of Milwaukee. And though I'm the youngest resident by about 60 years, it's absolutely phenomenal. I love it. And so in exchange for programming based around the arts, I receive free housing, professional development, and by far my favorite part, a never-ending series of challenging and enlightening conversations and countless bouts of laughter. And this all began with a conversation that I actually wasn't even a part of. But I'm so glad that I stepped into that conversation and really challenged myself in this role, and I was catapulted into it. And the thing is that everything that I do is in efforts of something much bigger than myself. Everything I do surrounds combating stigma that surrounds the elderly population, as well as social isolation and feelings of loneliness that also greatly plagues it, too. And so what I mean by social isolation and feelings of loneliness is that it's not necessarily a sickness. It's not something that something can be prescribed for. There's no physical symptoms. There's no way to really kind of cure it that you can just give them medication. Yet, after a while, it starts to take a toll, and those that have those feelings of social isolation and loneliness are more prone to long-term diseases, especially Alzheimer's and other dementias. And so, how do we combat this thing that we can't give a prescription, and it's not as easy just to say, yeah, come to my program, it's going to be great. So Verena Menick, who's a professor at McMaster University, says that research on interventions for social isolation and loneliness are inconsistent and inconclusive. And that's really not surprising at all, considering the fact that every single person has lived a very unique and different life. So therefore, we must engage them uniquely and differently, right? But through my program, have found a kind of commonality that everyone kind of gravitates towards, whether they're 5 or 25 or 105, and that's the arts. And so when I started as artist in residence, I was really kind of scared, really kind of terrified, because I was about to be living with people that were at least 60 years older than me, who had seen life, who had all of these challenges. And here I am, 23 years old, and I'm like fresh out of the gate. How do I engage with them? And you know what? Everything started to melt away when I began to talk to them. I especially leaned on the arts for this, because as artist in residence, it's in my title, right? But I began to talk about my love of music, my love of the arts, my love of theater. And that's when I really started to notice that we all have this inherent nature to want to relate to one another. And as humans, we also have this need to create or to externalize a piece of ourselves. And we want others to be witness to that. And what I mean by witnessing is being able to take the time to see or hear or touch, smell, taste, something that someone else created. So for example, right now you are all sitting here and you're witnessing me talk. And so, for example, in what work I do is I run a community art group, and we all get together, so myself and about 4 or 5 of my other residents, and we create art together. We are there to witness each other's process. We're there to witness each other's products that we make. We are there to see the frustrations that come through making a piece of art, because it can be frustrating. We are there to see the triumphs that happen once we are able to overcome those frustrations. And honestly, through this process, oftentimes stories come up because, when you're creating a piece of art, that's a piece of your life that you're externalizing. You're putting it out there for everyone else to see, and that can be very vulnerable. And then my residents also link stories to that. And they'll start to kind of go on tangents too, where, we'll be talking about, a lighthouse that they visited one summer, and then, 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, we're talking about what the best recipe is to bake cookies. Like, it's completely tangential, and it's wonderful. And so I really picked up on this need to really share their stories. And so I created a storytelling group as well, just to allow for a little more structure and facilitation. So every other week, my residents come prepared with a story from their lives surrounding a certain topic. So topics can range from travel to sports to scary stories to love to poetry, just kind of a little bit of everything. And I even have one person in my storytelling group that has a binder that's like this thick of all the stories he's written throughout his practice, because he's a retired doctor. And he is one of the most phenomenal storytellers I've ever heard in my life. Every word that he says is so creative and captivating, just the way that he uses his language and the words and his tone. And my residents then are able to relate to him. They're able to witness these stories that he's telling. They're able to internalize what's happening, what they're being witnessed to, and then they're able to give feedback to him, whether that's through another story or, oh my gosh, that was just absolutely amazing. And so I think this comes from this inherent need to relate to one another, right? We want to find those commonalities so that we're able to say, hey, I'm like you in some way. But I've also found that relationships can really be formed in differences. And in my storytelling group, I decided to practice what I preached one time. And I decided to share with my residents something that I loved, but I didn't think they were going to love. And that's slam poetry, which can be very loud and abrupt, sometimes abrasive and very sharp, right? I figured, this is kind of similar to like rap. It's something that's completely new and different, something that they have probably never heard before. And they loved it. Or at least those that didn't love it were really intrigued by it, and they really appreciated it. Because somehow my generation had taken an art form that, might have been dying out a little bit, and we evolved it so that it's still captivating and engaging. And I think there's two big takeaways from that story. Number one, again, we were able to relate to one another. We were able to open each other up to new perspectives. Number two, I had to eat my own words. You see, I had assumed that my residents were going to hate this art form because it was something completely new and it was something completely different. And I had stigmatized them in that moment, something I was actively trying to combat. And just because, it was something new and I had to take a step back and really check myself in that moment. And I know it comes as a shock and it comes as so surprising, but the elderly generation is really intrigued in what the millennial generation is doing. They really want to know what kids these days are up to. And they're always willing to try something new. And that reminds me of a story that I've really taken to heart. One of my residents shared with me once that he has a sign that his daughter got him in his apartment that says, "I may be over the hill, but the view is sure worth the climb." And I was like, okay, yeah, like I've heard of those signs. And then he was like, "I hate that sign." And I was like, why? And he just said, "I don't think we should ever stop climbing. I don't think we should ever stop learning. And I think that's something that I carry with me through this entire experience, because that just gives you a whole new perspective, that we should never stop climbing. We should never stop learning from each other, from new things, from everything, you know? And so as I was thinking about, okay, so why don't more people like me, why don't more millennials engage with this elderly population? I mean, they're so full of life, they're so full of resources, and we're just like, oh, maybe not. And I think it's because they make us uncomfortable, because they're different from us. And it's just that feeling of other. And I think the second part of it is it makes us face our own mortality. I can say as a 23-year-old, I don't think about that end of life phase very often. But the thing is the people that I work with aren't dead yet. They're very much alive. They're so full of life, in fact, that I often have to try to keep up with them. And I guess from all of this, I'm not saying you go out and be an artist in residence and live in a geriatric population. What I'm asking from you is that next time you see, the supposedly frail old lady sitting across from you, instead see the person sitting across from you. See a body that has been lived in, eyes that have seen so much, and a soul that has seen countless challenges, heartbreaks, and joys. Ask that person a question. Whether that's a simple, how are you doing today? Or, even, what was it like to be alive when the Beatles were in full swing? Because I can guarantee you that that conversation you have with them is going to be so meaningful for both you and them. You're opening each other up to new perspectives. And together, you can open the world up to each other. So please, never forget that you should never stop creating, you should never stop relating, and you should never stop learning. Thank you very much.